Today, I wanted to focus on the number one factor for spiritual health and spiritual growth. This is super important because we live in a spiritual world. With our eyes, we can see everything physical, but we can't see everything spiritual. We can see the physical objects, we can see the space in between the physical objects, and we can see humans and animals walking through it. However, we can't see entities, spiritual entities, just zooming by. Or can we? There is an entire spirit world that is not visible to our physical eyes. However, it is visible to our senses. However, we are so used to these sensations, we just write them off as normal and we categorize them into physicality, such as specific kinds of emotions, tensions, depression, anxiety, feel-good frills and vibrations and things like that. I know that many of us just think that we are normal people and we don't experience our sixth sense. However, every single one of us has this sixth sense and we experience it in great intensity. What is the sixth sense? Well, we all know about the five senses: touch, taste, smell, hearing, and sight, and we all experience those. However, we experience things beyond these five senses. Anything that you experience beyond these five senses is the sixth sense. Welcome to the spiritual world. You are breathing in the very depths of it moment by moment. Now, the spiritual world consists of a lot of evil. There are a lot of spiritual entities that are causing all sorts of chaos amongst humans. Through our sixth sense, we can feel a lot of this chaos. Depending on how we react to it will determine if you lose energy, don't lose energy, or possibly even gain some. The spiritual world is designed based off of good versus evil. Now, we all know to do good. We're not going to go murder someone, steal something, or cheat on our spouse. For one, we could go to jail or simply be labeled as a bad person in society. However, there is a whole entire good versus evil that nobody can see but us. This is what happens on the inside of us and how we react on the inside. For example, a person may say they're all about doing good, but they're all about fame, money, and greed. Or another example is someone might start a charity and help children with cancer, and they raise all this money, but they keep 99% of the funds. These people may sound like and portray like they're doing good, but on the inside, they're evil as can be. Now, most of us are not going to commit adultery and cheat on our spouse. This would make us look bad and we could be labeled as a bad person in society. However, let's take a look on the inside. Let's say we're walking down the street and then we're a married person and someone of the opposite sex says, "Hey, gorgeous." And all of a sudden, like off the cuff, you get a little flustered, you turn red, you even perspire a little bit. At this moment in time, you could do one of two things. First, you could say in your heart, "No, I'm married," in your head, and then just focus and, get through this and fight it all off and get on with your day and everything is fine and dandy. Or you can kind of just "Ooh, thank you," in your head. And then you just start playing with those tingly vibrations and emotions and frills. And you start playing with it and you start looping it in your mind over and over and over again. And you're wonder, how can you get that compliment again? How can you see that person again? And you start planning and you're just looping. You're not even present anymore. Right now, at this moment in time, you're being 100% toyed with in the spiritual world and you're being completely drained. Those tingly frills and vibrations that you're playing with is actually your energy being drained. Bye-bye. When you play with these tingly vibrations and frills, you'll feel ecstatic and buzzing for hours from the poison. However, you will feel the consequences later as you lay there powerless and miserable because you were just violently fed upon in the spiritual world. Call it depression, anxiety, nervous tension, or whatever you want. Your energy has been drained and you simply have no spiritual energy in the spiritual world to defend yourself. If you could just see what just happened, it almost looks like vultures feeding upon a dead piece of meat. Remember, the spiritual world is designed based off of good versus evil. When you do evil, your energy drains. When you do good, you build up energy and you have more power and freedom in the spiritual world. Now, these entities are on standby, just waiting for you to make moves like this. They especially target you when you're feeling your best, when you've done acts of good and you have built up all this energy and you are feeling your best, you're overflowing with energy. You are a prime target at this point. They will actually even work through humans and get them to give you that compliment and target you for energy drain. Possession is 100% real. And many people just write this off as folklore, like many other biblical principles, which are not folklore and are actually true. And this idea of committing adultery in your heart is just one of many examples that can cause energy drain. There's many more examples, such as the strong need to be right, wanting to make another person jealous, or insecurity, just to name a few. In our belts, we have two legendary spiritual weapons to valiantly succeed with great glory in the spiritual world. Now, the second greatest spiritual weapon that we have is our focus. For example, when you get that compliment and you get a little flustered, we need to focus in order to process everything in every moment in time to make the correct decision, hopefully make the correct decisions and get on with our day. This focus work is just absolutely critical for spiritual health, which a lot of the time translates into physical health. So the big question is, how do we do this focus work? Okay, so what we do is we take our attention and we focus to experience our entire reality at this moment in time. When you do this, you can see all of our five senses at the exact same time, and the sixth sense. So we can experience our entire reality when we focus like this. And when you do something like this, what you want to do is scan your entire reality for any signs of pain. Now, pain isn't always physical. It can also be emotional, physical, everything you can possibly imagine. So what we want to do is focus so we can scan our entire reality for the greatest amount of pain that we can find. And once you identify it, you want to look at it and do everything in your power to get rid of it out of your system. This is how you do the spiritual work. This is why people do meditation, just because they have misery within their being and they're trying to remove it. So you identify that, and then the process of removing it is a learning experience. And you just have to sit with it as you focus. Sometimes it could take 10 seconds, sometimes it could take 2 hours. When you lose your focus, that's when it takes the longest. The main thing is to stay focused, find the pain, and just sit with it and learn. And as you figure that out, you can have it removed. And once you have that removed, oh my God, the tension leaving, that area of tension just feels so good, it's ridiculous. And then once you've done that and succeeded, you can then start the process over again and scan your entire reality once again for the next sensation of pain and do the same process. And you just do this over and over and over again. When you play with these tingly vibrations and frills, it puts you in a spiritual mess. And when you do this focus work and you go out and about, you better do that focus work, because you are now a prime target and you are overflowing. Now, don't get me wrong, we all want to experience bliss, but many of us don't understand what bliss is. We mistake it for these tingly vibrations and frills that we like to play with, and emotional vibrations. However, this is your energy being drained to where you feel the consequences later and become miserable. Now, true bliss is void of pain. When you've actually done all of the spiritual work, you have done acts of good, and you have the ultimate peace. This is the best bliss that you can possibly imagine. It's not those tingly frills and vibrations. This is void of pain. This peace, and I don't mean peace, I mean real peace. This is the best bliss that you can possibly imagine. Now, Eastern mysticism has capitalized on this focus work in many instances. For example, with yoga, when you do yoga, you focus on the stretch. And when you do this type of focus work, many amazing things can happen. That's why so many people around the world swear by yoga and all sorts. There's huge movements of people doing it. However, many times in group settings, you could be set up for an energy drain. Many times that the yoga teachers, sometimes unknowingly, produces this feel-good, tingly vibration energy drain at the end of the session to drain everybody's energy. I remember one time there was this one yoga teacher who would train all of her students for an hour straight, and they all built up all this spiritual energy from all the hard work and stretching and focus work and all these different things. And at the end of this session, the yoga teacher would do this breathing practice. It was kind of like a ritual thing. And it was shown to me that during this ceremonial breathing practice where you wind down, the teacher summoned a serpent that I saw circulating around the room, just draining all the energy that was just built up from all the hard work of all the yoga teachers and stuff like this. I don't have special abilities or anything like this. I believe that was just shown to me by God in that moment in time, so I could share that with other people right now, for example, right here. Also, many other instances where Eastern mysticism capitalizes on this focus work is like Eastern mystic gurus. They teach meditation, which is a very powerful form of focus work. For example, Osho was a guy back in the 70s and 80s who taught people about meditation nonstop. And in his group settings, he would get everybody to do meditation, which could be good. It's a good focus work thing. But then afterwards, after everyone built up all of this energy, he would teach tantra, sex, ecstatic dancing, letting it all go, tantra, all these other feel-good frills, to where everybody would just get their energy drained after they did all of that hard work, arduous meditation, and built up all that energy for all of the spiritual entities to drain it. Now, what would happen is these meditators would feel great during those moments in time and things like this, but in the end, they would be spiritually drained and miserable because they were powerless in the spiritual world. And then they would yearn to do the meditation loop again, to get those heights of tingly vibrations again. Meanwhile, they think they're spiritually growing heavily by being with an Eastern mystic and things like that. But in essence, they're just going in a loop, just doing the same thing over and over again. You have to be careful of evil in the spiritual world that is dressed up as good in the physical world. And don't get me wrong, we want to be doing this focus work to avoid performing acts of evil, but we need to learn how to hold on to it, how to hold on to our energy. I'm not saying that Osho was bad or yoga teachers are bad. Many of them do this unconsciously. But when somebody does this consciously and they know what they're doing, you got to be careful, because these are the most evil people on the planet. So many people think that meditation, yoga, gurus, or this focus work is the number one thing that we can do for spirituality, when in truth, it is actually absolutely nothing compared to the number one spiritual weapon that we have. Meditation might bring you those tingly vibrations, a glimpse of this hologram, but the truth is, a third eye activation, but the truth is, it's those tingly vibrations and frills is our energy being drained. You can build up some energy from meditation and this type of focus work, but you're pretty much capped off if you're trying to do this spiritual work all by yourself. Now, many of you know that I believe in Jesus, and I would never try to push Jesus upon anybody. I respect every one of you and all of your decisions and choices and what you make. And don't get me wrong, I do meditation focus work all the time, and I do yoga stretches all the time also. We just have to be careful and understand not to allow the energy drain. It's the same with Christianity. If you go to church and you're exposed to those tingly emotional vibrations, you have to be careful. These evil entities are lurking everywhere in the spiritual world. And just like some of these yogi teachers and gurus, there's priests and Christian leaders that do the same exact thing. They produce this spiritual energy drain. So you have to be careful. The evil is lurking everywhere in the spiritual world. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to give you the number one spiritual weapon available to man. This goes exponentially way beyond than any focus work can possibly do. If you do this next thing, I guarantee that you can move further spiritually than you have ever fathomably thought possible. So here's what you do. You clasp your hands together and you go, I am sorry I didn't realize that you were watching every last thing that I was doing. And I didn't know that all of these things were impacting my spiritual growth. And I didn't even fully understand what I was doing. I am sorry. From this moment forward, before I did this, this, and this, from this moment forward, I'm going to do this, this, and this. I promise you, there is nothing more important to me than this. I will prove it to you. I will show you. I am so sorry. Please consider me for moving forward spiritually in the most gentle way possible. I'm sorry. You guys, I guarantee that if you do this and perform it, you have the potential to move forward than more than you have ever thought was fathomable possible. There is nothing more powerful than this. And when you have the most powerful spiritual weapon behind your back like this, you're just unstoppable. So moving on, I'm going to tell you an esoteric secret that nobody really knows about. However, it's so darn obvious. Not all thoughts are our own. What? Not all thoughts are our own? Are you crazy? Well, let's just say you're hanging out, not focusing the best, and then all of a sudden you get this thought, desire, and urge to take the scissors and stab the dog. Now, obviously, we're not going to act upon that. And obviously, that's a foreign thought. It's not our own. We would not purposefully choose to think to take the scissors and stab the dog. And what's crazy is these foreign thoughts are not just a whisper in the ear. It's a full body experience. Not only do you get the whisper, but you get the urge and desire at the same exact time. Possession is 100% real, and it happens in different degrees in different people. These spiritual entities try to control us, and some people are 100% controlled and gone. Other times, you may feel their attempt, and you may even very well feel them evilly smiling upon your very own face. So now back to this secondary spiritual weapon. This focus work helps us discern between our real thoughts and these foreign thoughts. We want to utilize this focus work in every way possible to act righteous. For example, when you're walking down the street and the opposite sex says, "Hey, gorgeous," at that moment in time, you want to be focusing to where you hopefully make the correct choices and decisions to avoid spiritual drain, do acts of good and stuff like this. And without this focus work, you're like a sitting duck. When this type of thing happens and you get that compliment, we're so used to these magnetic vibrations. It's almost like a moth aimlessly just flying right into the candlelight flame. It's just like this mad magnetic attraction. And if you don't do this focus work, you are simply just a sitting duck. Again, this is how the spiritual world works. When you do acts of evil, your energy drains. And when you do acts of good, you don't lose your energy and you have the potential to actually gain some. Also, again, I don't push Jesus upon anybody, but for this particular instance, I want to share one quick passage from Jesus, Matthew 5:27-28, where Jesus says, "You have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that whoever looks at a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart." This goes perfectly with our main example throughout this video. So even if you don't commit physical adultery, when you commit it in your heart, it's not one of the 10 commandment laws. However, there are spiritual consequences as we're talking about. You play with those spiritual tingly vibrations and your energy drains. By saying this quote, he is simply just trying to help you. He cares. He's not trying to put rules upon you and force you. He's just trying to give you righteousness and good. And so he's just trying to help you survive in this spiritual world and jungle. So the mercy that he has and what an apology can do is absolutely miraculous. When you play with these frills, for example, with the opposite sex among one of many things, a spiritual tentacle can attach to you. We'll simply call it a tentacle. This tentacle could stay with you for hours, days, weeks, months, years, or even decades. So in this moment in time, you can try to do the focus work, scan for the pain, find the pain, which may very well be where this tentacle input is. Sit with it as you focus and suffer, and you sit with this pain endlessly, and hopefully you'll have the spiritual ability and power to just be able to remove it. So what an apology does, which unleashes his endless mercy for you, he will possibly just remove that tentacle for you so you could stand up and try again. He understands how difficult it is. For a lifetime, we've been playing with these magnetic, irresistible, vibrational frills, and he will help us as long as we're trying our hardest, make that commitment and say that apology. He may just remove that tentacle for you so you could stand again in this evil spiritual world to try again as we learn to stand over and over again until we've got it. So that apology, again, which unleashes his unending, endless mercy, can provide incredible results for you. One of the reasons for all of this resistance is to teach us to be righteous and how to survive in the spiritual world. Let me get another passage real quick that relates to this. Okay, so I have that passage right here. So one of the reasons why I created this is because, I run a raw foods business, and again, I would never push Jesus upon everybody. I respect everybody's choices, but I do love speaking about it. And when we were all growing up, many people have been exposed to militant Christians, like going like this and posing like rules that are not necessary. And it pushed a lot of people away from the truth, in my opinion. And so I don't want to be be preaching this stuff, to my friends and customers. It's just like, they don't need that type of thing. But I do love talking about it, so I created this. For those of you who know me, I've been through a lot. I was at the top of the world. I lost everything. I lost my health. I almost lost my family. I lost everything I ever owned, everything just gone. And God has raised me back up out of nowhere. It's a very miraculous story. Anyway, I feel like he's gifted me a lot of knowledge and information. And I have that passage here that I wanted to share. Jesus told his disciples that while he sometimes spoke in parables to the crowd, a time would come when the truth would be revealed plainly. Can you imagine if I was part of this and that was my purpose here? Why else would he reveal these things to me? And so here's the passage. Though I have been speaking figuratively, a time is coming when I will no longer use this kind of language, but will tell you plainly about my Father. He also encouraged his disciples to share this openly in they were taught privately. In Matthew 10:27, it says, "What I tell you in the dark, speak in the daylight. What is whispered in your ear, proclaim from the roofs." What else would I have in my life if I didn't follow my heart and do this? So what we're going to be doing is live Q&A spiritual hangouts every Thursday at 8:30 p.m. And I'm going to be answering everybody's questions, and we're going to go into deep. I'm also posting videos like the one here today on an ongoing basis, revealing spiritual secrets, speaking plainly of the Father or of Jesus' Father, and so much more. So many people might be asking, why did I name this Christ on the Edge? Again, it really hits home that so many people have been turned off from the truth because of militant Christians and people pointing the finger. The finger's been pointed at me from Christians many times, and it's just turned a lot of people away. And it's just like an excuse for people to not believe and things like this. So what I do is I call it Christ on the Edge, and we take it to the limits of what is allowed. For example, there are 10 commandments. These are the laws that we must follow, these 10 commandments. And most of us are doing that anyway, just in order to be a good person in general. We're not going to steal. We're not going to murder. We're not going to, commit adultery. These are just things that we're doing anyhow. So we just follow these. We just have to make a couple tweaks and just go with this and make that commitment. And boom, it's like major things can happen. However, if it's not part of those 10 commandments, hey, I am going to have some serious fun here. I'm the type of guy who likes to live on the edge and have a lot of fun. And we're going to take it to the very edge of what's allowed and what's not allowed. For example, just as one minor example, I'm going to take my kids trick-or-treating for Halloween, and we're going to celebrate Christmas during these so-called pagan holidays that militant, it's not a commandment not to have fun at Halloween. It's not like I'm worshiping witches and stuff.